The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Fridays here. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, hoping you get kicked off the right way for a holiday weekend. Can stream the show, watch us on video, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel or the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed. At HVarsity Radio, we're loaded up as we get you into the firecracker weekend. So we'll spend some time. Jacob Padilla back on the basketball court. We'll get the rundown on some prep hoops, his thoughts on Carter Nelson and Chuck Love's recruitment. That's on the way. Great feature by Jacob as well on Tominaga. So I want to check that out on hailvarsity.com. Some thoughts from Bob Stoops on Oklahoma not having the same struggles as Nebraska did as OU set to transition into the SEC. We'll go there. And yes, hour two, Bill Doleman joins us, Pride of Fairbury, NBC Sports. A busy week in Nebraska athletics, Husker football. Bill has some thoughts. Brady Oltmans is back because we love him, and he's very kind and gracious. So more and the latest on the recruiting front from Brady. One of the recruits this week, Rex Guthrie, talented safety out of Colorado. Rex will join us via the stream around 5:40. So if you can't stand looking at me, totally get it. If Elijah's mustache bothers you, it's okay. But do tune in, radio or video, for the Rex Guthrie interview. All of this will be posted, of course, with the podcast, Hail Varsity Radio, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. So, Elijah, got to ask you this. When it comes to the 4th of July holiday weekend, we'll be back at it tomorrow morning for the weekend edition right around 7:40 on the stream. But did you have an argument with your dad, or did you have to sell going to a lake or camping or going out with buddies to your folks back in the day? Or did they want you around as, well, let's all get together as a family?
The standard for a while now has been, I mean, the 4th of July holiday kind of gets broken up into the 2 days where you have the night on the 3rd in addition to the 4th. And it seemed to be every single year I got to pick. One night was spent with friends, doing whatever I wanted to do, going to a buddy's pool, going and hanging out with them, lighting off fireworks, whatever. Whereas then the other day was saved for the family. So the traditional standard for me has been on the 3rd of July, I hang out with friends, go to someone's pool, someone's lake, whatever. And then on the 4th, it's go hang out with the family. And then usually we go dirty our way into the country club and go watch the country club show. That's been a tradition for a while now for our family now. So that's always a lot of fun. That's how it goes. So the 3rd is the night where I am at risk severely of blowing off a finger. The 4th, if I make it to the 4th, I'm in the clear.
Well, that is good to hear. This is brilliant. I had to say yes because Junior is off to his little friend's lake house with her family. And he didn't ask me, okay, I was sitting over there paying bills this afternoon. I'm like, dude, he's brilliant. He's sinister. So he sends a text to my wife. He's like, yeah, I want to go to the lake with Emma. Jake and Katie say I'm invited and they'll take me, but you know what? If you won't let me go, they aren't going to go to the lake. And I'm like, oh, my goodness. That's not really what I said, but, we got to clean it up for radio. It's like, we got to let them go. That was perfect.
Manipulation 101.
That was absolutely the mother of all guilt trips. I'm like, you're working all weekend. You don't want to hang out with me. Let him go learn how to water ski or fish or throw dynamite and fish that way. I'm kidding. But I have to tip my cap to Junior. I'll see him Sunday, and he'll be sunburnt and groggy. But it's all good. My mom and brother and that family's off to Field of Dreams. They have a baseball tournament going on out there, which is really awesome. I'm going to lose some golf balls. That's my plan, and be the fat guy by the pool. Numbers to get in, 489-1240, 489-1240. You can dial us up. You can email the show, chris@hailvarsity.com. Give me a follow at Schmidt_radio, or Elijah a follow on Twitter at Herbal Essence. So good lineup today. We will dive into what didn't happen last night on the recruiting trail for Nebraska, Caden Massey to K-State in a moment. But want to start off with Pete Thamel, really talented national writer. He's been with Yahoo. He's been with Sports Illustrated for a lot of years, and he is pretty much the go-to right now for ESPN. He is their national college football writer. We have such incredible quality at Hail Varsity. They could write nationally if they want, but they do just an incredible job with the Nebraska coverage. But Thamel lays out a really interesting rundown on Coach Rhule, a nice feature as ESPN got to spend some time in Coach Rhule's office. It sounds like last week or probably around the time of the College World Series. So we'll get into that story and really what some of Rhule's tipping points were. We've heard a lot. We heard from Phil Steele yesterday with us as he's covered Matt Rhule's career, just the reputation that is real around the college football coaching fraternity, former and current coaches, with the success, the plan, the implementation, and just the direction, the leadership, honestly. I mean, that's what gets a lot of it done. But some interesting details here in how the buy-in happened at Temple. The buy-in happened at Baylor, and really good quotes from Gabe Ervin on how his buy-in really came to fruition during winter workouts. Paul's on the line. He's going to get us kicked off. Paul, thanks for calling Hail Varsity. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, guys. Yeah, we're all too enamored with the stars, but here's a good question. Re-ranking, how many of our guys that are 3 do you think are going to be ranked as 4?
Well, I mean, Kalen bumped up to a 4 in some of the services. I can't tell you. I mean, because time will tell. How's their senior season look? Do they get elevated that way? A lot of these dudes have already committed. Some of the kids weren't even ranked, Paul, and once Nebraska offered and got the commit, all of a sudden they became a 3-star. So that says a little bit. I think a couple of the track/wide receiver guys that maybe were a little under the radar out of Texas is the example I'm thinking of. But I don't know, maybe a couple more. I'm not as worried about the star additions as I am just let's get them into Lincoln and get them through their senior season healthy if you're a Nebraska fan, and then let them develop. Let them develop. You know, let's see what the re-recruiting rankings actually look like in 3 or 4 years when Athlon or the Athletic, I should say, comes out with Max Olson's story. Max does a great job, but the re-ranking of a recruiting class is really the real truth serum, in my opinion. How many guys go to the NFL? How many guys contributed? How many guys started? How many guys were all conference? All of that is going to lead to wins if you're Nebraska. That'll be a bigger telling point for me.
For sure.
Paul, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Good stuff from Paul. Have a good 4th, Paul. Appreciate it. 489-1240. But, yeah, Elijah, you could see some guys jump up in star ratings. I mean, Carter Nelson, you know, he's already a 4-star. Does he have such a great senior season that he might be bordering on 5? I don't know. Could. That does tend to happen. And Kalen, I mean, he should rise as well as he performed in the Elite 11. That's current data. That's other eyeballs that hadn't seen him before. So that's pretty big time for him.
Well, something tells me that a guy like Carter Nelson would have a much better chance of rising to a 5-star if he had committed to a school like Georgia. It's a simple fact of the matter that it really shouldn't matter in the recruiting rankings, but where you end up going does matter. Kalen, If he went and performed well at the Elite 11 camp and he's committed to Missouri, I bet it'd be a harder sell to boost him to a 4-star than whenever you perform well at the Elite 11 camp and you're committed to Nebraska. That is just simply put how the recruiting rankings go. Guys, evaluators that work for these websites, they trust their own evaluations. But then if there's a coach out there, say Kirby Smart comes to town and says, I like this kid, I want him to be a Georgia Bulldog. Now I think all the recruiting services have to sit back and go, why do we have this kid ranked as a 3-star when Kirby Smart values him so highly? And that's part of the recruiting rankings, and that's why sometimes you have to take recruiting rankings with a grain of salt. They're important to a point, but what's more important is kind of as you laid out, what does that re-ranking look like in 4 years once these guys have gotten to campus, once they're actually on a college football field? Because there's traits that might not show in a 16 or 17-year-old kid on the football field at camps that some coaches say, hey, you remind me of this guy and how you do something whenever he was 17 years old. I think there's something here we can develop. It might not show. You might be a 3-star whenever you're leaving high school, but then you get to campus, get a little bit of work in a college strength and conditioning program, and now that trait that, say, Matt Rhule really liked comes to the forefront, and now you're playing like a 4 or a 5-star earlier in your Husker career. That's how these things go. I mean, I don't think Husker fans should completely look at rankings as being the be-all, end-all. I think it's important generally, and something I've laid out before. Like, if you're a top 5 class in the nation according to the recruiting rankings, that means something. If you're between 10 and 25, that means something. If you're between 25 and 40, that means something. But I don't think you can look at it and say, well, Nebraska's 24th in the country. Look who's 21st. Why is Nebraska behind them? That isn't as accurate as recruiting rankings are. And that's one of the things I think I've had to learn as I've been in this job for a couple of years now is nobody's perfect in their evaluation of what a 17 or an 18-year-old kid can be. That goes for coaches the same it goes for recruiting services. And sometimes you have to take it with a grain of salt. Yeah, coach saw a 3-star kid. He's not looking at the recruiting rankings. He's seeing the traits that these kids are showing right now and what he can turn them into. So does it matter if Carter Nelson's a 4-star or a 5-star? No, he's still Carter Nelson. Does it matter if Daniel Kalen's a 3-star or a 4-star? No. As soon as they step foot on campus, your recruiting rankings are out the door and they don't matter anymore.
And case in point with some of this is getting buy-in as we go back to the Pete Thamel article on ESPN. And when it came to getting that buy-in, the Temple team that rose the ladder, right? They were doing gassers pregame. And some guys were like, why the hell are we doing that? But it was a mentality. We're going to be tougher, and we're going to be able to do some things. We're going to force ourselves to do some things that other teams don't. That'll pay off in the fourth quarter. It eventually started happening. You look at Baylor, where they were getting trounced by teams. He circled Oklahoma State, and he made it a point to say, look, guys, I promise you, you buy into this spread and tempo, we will beat them. And then they won a year later in their 6-6 campaign, and then blew them out on their way to a Big 12 championship game. So what he says happens, or has happened at Baylor and Temple. And he in this story, it details getting some advice from his dad, Rhule, about building one relationship at a time. So I got a kick out of this. He's big on food and table time, right? You sit down, you break bread, you spend time with people, and that's kind of been a staple of everywhere he's been. I love it. We love going to dinner with friends and family, but it's fun to go catch up with people that you care about, and family dinner, right? A lot of families still have the old Sopranos around the kitchen table, Sunday family dinner, and he'd pop for $500 worth of Popeyes for the Baylor football team on Mondays. They'd sit and kick it, and that helped the camaraderie part. But when it comes to Nebraska's issue has been the drama on the field, those close losses that have been detailed for 3 years, and then Nebraska's relevancy. The brand is still relevant for TV eyeballs, but it's not been relevant when it comes to competition in the conference chase. Nebraska has not been a threat in the West for a few years, unfortunately. They've not been a threat for a Big Ten championship game. And this quote is impressive from Gabe Ervin. And Gabe got some coaching during a winter workout, and even from a specifics part, These guys set their water bottle up a certain way to the right. I mean, it's a detail thing. I mean, it sounds stupid. Who cares? Well, it's okay. I'm willing to set my water bottle to the right because this is what coach wants. And then you see the preparation part, Elijah. That's what hit Gabe Ervin with like a ton of bricks, was the preparation from a situational standpoint that was costing Nebraska games the last 3 years.
It's about setting your habits, right? Like that water bottle thing, It sounds stupid, but you're setting a habit and you're setting a standard within your football program that you're going to do things the right way, whether or not you think it matters at all or not. We're going to do the little things right. We're going to do the big things right. No matter what we do at Nebraska, we're going to do it in a way that is the way that is set forth by the coaching staff, which they deem to be the correct way. If the entire team buys in and does the little things the right way off the football field, it's going to make it a habit whenever you get onto the football field, doing the little things right every single down, every single play, every single instant that you're between the white lines.
Well, pretty impressive, too, as Rhule gets it. This is the why generation. Got to explain why and explain why you're doing something thoroughly to get that buy-in. But the targeted prep is trying to make Nebraska more physical. They'll focus on weight. They'll focus on agility. And those agility drills and those mat drills going to get you ready for the fourth quarter. Jacob Padilla is going to join us. Hail Varsity continues.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. Jacob Padilla joins us, HailVarsity.com and magazine. Jacob, thanks for a few minutes. And busy weekend for you on the hardwood, talking some hoops. What's on your schedule? What's the calendar look like? I know AAU's cranking back up.
Yep, we made it through June, all the high school camps and leagues and all that, and we're back to the grassroots season now here for July. We got four tournament weekends here in July for my Nebraska Supreme 15U team, starting this weekend here at home with the OSA River City Hoops, kind of the annual kickoff to July that you see a lot of kind of local teams and regional teams playing.
Jacob, who are some of the kids you're coaching and some of the kids you're likely to see? Some names folks may know or some names folks will soon know.
Yeah, Nate Kelly was a starter for Scottsbluff Class D state tournament team. He's had a heck of a freshman year, and he'll be their best player coming back this next season. So you'll see him make some noise in Class B this year, and excited to have him because with his track schedule and everything, we only got to see him with us for 2 of our 5 weekends in the spring. So excited to have my team closer to full strength. We're still missing a couple of guys. One guy's injured. Another guy's got a soccer tournament out of town. But Nate's one, and then I think Derek Tonges is another for Ashland Greenwood that, they graduate a lot, C1 champions, but he is ready, I think, to step in and play a major role for them. So those are 2 guys I think that you'll see starting for good teams this year off of my team. As far as just tournament in general, ETG, the ETG Midwest, the Adidas program here locally, they're playing 2 showcase games each for their 3 divisions, 15U, 16U, and 17U. So those will be on Saturday. They're not playing in the bracket portion of the tournament, but they are playing tomorrow afternoon if fans want to go out and watch there with Braden Frager, who Creighton, Nebraska, and several others now have offered. He's playing for the 16U team. So that's Jaden Jackson for the 17U team. Has a few Division I offers now. So those are some of the names to look out for.
Jacob Padilla is with us here at Hail Varsity Radio. And Jacob, just quickly here, tell me about the game plan for the weekend. What are you rolling out with offensively, defensively? I know maybe there's some opponents listening. You don't want to give too much away, but I need to get a dive into Jacob Padilla's coaching mind. What are you rolling out with this weekend?
Well, would have liked to have more than one 90-minute practice to get ready for this after a month apart, but with kind of the spread-out nature of my team, had to try to pack a lot into our practice last night. So hopefully we can right now I'm just hoping to go out there and play some good basketball. Hope they remember the play calls and all that sort of thing, remember each other's names and all that, because we've been apart for quite a while now. But I'm pretty laid back as a coach. I want to put them in, spread the floor, put them in positions where they can make decisions and kind of learn and grow as basketball players. A lot of ball movement, hopefully, sharing the ball and then communicating on defense, covering each other up, play strictly man defense, not a whole lot of zone and trapping and all that. I just want to kind of encourage good defensive fundamentals, being in the right place, helping each other out, all that sort of thing.
I wanted to ask you about Carter Nelson. I don't know his athletic background when it comes to basketball. Is that something he did for a while before track, or has he always been a track kid?
Well, he does both. He's kind of at least three-sport athlete out there. I actually coached against him last summer. He was playing with some Western Nebraska kids. Came here, played in tournament here locally, and he only dunked twice on us. We got the win, but yeah, definitely showed off the athleticism. He's a really good basketball player for Ainsworth there. Double-digit scorer. The athleticism translates to rebounding, blocking shots, and everything. So yeah, he's kind of a do-it-all type athlete out there for a small school in Nebraska.
What's your thought on Nebraska getting him and just his athleticism at the next level?
Yeah, it's a big win. Anytime you can keep someone that nationally recognized, and with with some of the best coaches in the country visiting him, showing real interest. It's not just like, oh, we're going to toss out an offer because he's a highly ranked kid. Those programs wanted him. They made the effort to go show that they wanted him. So it really is a big recruiting win for Nebraska to be able to keep somebody like that home. Seems like assist goes to Daniel Kalin for striking up a quick friendship with him and kind of tightening those bonds throughout this recruitment here to kind of help push it over the finish line for Nebraska. But yeah, he's a really good athlete. We'll see kind of what their plan is for him from a kind of strength and conditioning standpoint, develop his body once he gets on campus. The adjustment going from transitioning to 11-man football, obviously going to be a little bit of a leap there, but the raw tools there, the athleticism, definitely has to be enticing for that coaching staff. And you've got some pretty good. I mean, you look at that tight end room over the next couple of years here, the athletes that they have to work with. Bob Wager's going to have some pretty nice pieces to build that room with. You've got a guy like Nate Borkershire, who's kind of the opposite of that. You know, the walk-on in-state kid that earned a scholarship and kind of forced his way onto the field last year. And then you've got the kind of the wild cards, the really talented, highly recruited guys that we'll have to see what they can get with Thomas Fedoni, obviously coming off the injuries, Eric Gilbert with his kind of labor status, and then in the future with Carter Nelson joining the room as well.
Jacob, is Carter Nelson a guy that you foresee getting some early playing time? That's been something that over the past 5 years we haven't seen a lot of highly touted guys that actually get on the field early in their playing career at Nebraska, the exceptions being Wandale Robinson, a big exception to that rule, as well as maybe Ty Robinson. He got some early playing time, and after the redshirt season, you could maybe count Nash Hutmacher in there too, but hasn't seemed like a lot of these guys that Husker fans have been excited to get on campus have been getting on the field early. Tight end's a bit of a unique position in that regard. I think Carter Nelson's going to need some changes to his body once he gets to college, but do you foresee the Husker coaching staff finding a way to get him on the field? It seems like that could be a big selling point to recruits down the road is, hey, look, if you're a highly touted kid, we're going to get you on the field early here.
I think a lot of that will depend on what the guys on the team right now do. What opportunity will be there? Like, I mean, if Carter Nelson goes in there and shows that he's ready to play, I have no doubt that we've seen that Matt Rhule in the past has had no problems going young early in his tenures with these schools. But if you've got Fedoni that goes down there and locks down a significant role next season, you've got guys like you return all your significant contributors at that position, then it's not like, oh, he's going to walk in and start from day one. You've got the kind of the wiggle room with the four-game redshirt rule to potentially get him some experience out there if you do feel good about that spot, or if maybe some of those guys struggle a little bit, then Nelson could walk in a situation where, hey, if I prove myself here, I'm going to have a chance to play more than just those 2, 3, 4 games or whatever. is allowed with the redshirt rule. So a lot of it will depend on what happens this season for all those guys that we're bringing in next year. I mean, this is kind of the year for Rhule, and it's kind of the fresh start for all the guys that are coming back. Plus, you've got the newcomers coming in. Everybody's got a chance to go earn playing time right now, and that'll kind of establish what the needs are moving forward, what the roles will be available as they bring in this next recruiting class and bring in transfers to add to what we learned from this year.
Couple more minutes. Jacob Padilla's with us, HailVarsity.com and magazine at Jacob Padilla _ on Twitter. Jacob, really awesome story you dropped, the Keisei Tominaga film study, his last 9 games. I know that appeared on HailVarsity.com last night. Give folks a little taste of some of the work you put in.
Yeah, I think Keisei's kind of explosion down the stretch, emergence as a 20-point-a-game scorer on great efficiency was kind of one of the most entertaining parts of last season, and kind of pulled the season out of the tailspin that could have happened after the season-ending injury. So I wanted to kind of dive into tape and see, okay, what changed? How was he able to do this? And what I saw is just they got him involved in a lot of different ways, and he was good at a lot, and he was really effective in basically all of them. So it didn't necessarily look like, oh, this guy's just simply on a hot streak and it's a fluke. He has really gotten better and figured out ways to be effective. He's kind of figured out how to get the most out of what he has from a physical and skill set standpoint. He's gotten so much more smarter, more confident, craftier with the ball in his hands, in addition to shooting the ball at a ridiculous rate that he's come to be known for. So and it kind of broke it down by each of the different play types. You could see down the stretch there were not nearly as many spot-up opportunities as earlier in the season, because teams realized, well, can't leave that guy open. So you saw them running more handoffs for him, more off-screen plays, and even ran a few pick-and-rolls, too. A little over 1 a game down those last 9. So, and he was effective at all of it. So I don't know that he's going to be scoring 20 a game all season long next season, but it definitely wasn't a fluke, the season that he had last year. He's going to be a really important piece and a really versatile piece for Nebraska, especially if a guy like Bryce Williams comes in and can attract some of that attention. You get some of these other guys out there like Jamarcus Lawrence and even a Rink Mass who can space the floor a little bit. You might get a few more of those spot opportunities. It'll be harder to take Keisei away if he's not the only shooter that teams have to worry about out there.
Jacob, obviously a big factor in Keisei coming back was he wanted to put some more on film for a potential professional career. What do you think he needs to put on film next season to get some looks, maybe not from NBA scouts, but just professional basketball in general? And I guess we'll start with NBA.
I think the biggest thing is just defensively, continue to improve on that end. Like we've seen, the effort's good. Like he puts himself in position to be a quality help defender at times, but he's just a 6'1" shooting guard playing in the Big Ten that isn't a phenomenal athlete. So there's some certain physical limitations there. You just got to keep getting stronger. Hoiberg talked about that's kind of a big part of the offseason for him. They put him on an aggressive weight training program and kind of tasked Keisei with keeping that up as he went back home to work to train with the Japanese national team, and to kind of not lose that ground that they made up in the month here of working out and continuing to get bigger and stronger so he can better hold his own. And then just continuing to, show that, like I said, the last 9 games weren't a fluke, that he can sustain that effectiveness, even if the volume isn't quite the same. And then just showing a little bit more of that pick and roll, of kind of ability to put it on the deck and attack closeouts, and to show that he's not just a shooter, that kind of that off the dribble. He's never going to be a point guard or a dynamic ball handler creator at the pro level, but if you're able to take advantage of aggressive closeouts as a great shooter, that makes you a more versatile player. So those are, I think, some of the things that he's going to have to work on.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Jacob Padilla joining us at Hail Varsity Radio, and can find Jacob on Twitter at Jacob Padilla _ HailVarsity.com and magazine. Jacob, we'll wind it down, and I saw this on social media. Had a chance to see a lot of Chuck Love's games last year. I know he went from Southwest to Northeast in Lincoln, but Chuck's getting a lot of attention. I know that Missouri and Kansas State, you probably have a few more schools. You know of a few more schools than I do that are interested in, but a 4-star ranking top 60 that I see, 53rd in the country. Reaction to that, always enjoyed watching Chuck get creative with the ball and hit some big threes, but also get to the rim. He'll be doing nice things for the Rockets this upcoming season.
He said 53rd, ESPN's updated 2025 rankings, and it seems like he really had a great weekend down at the Nike Top 100 camp that he and Amari Bynum both went to. We saw got plenty of pub kind of coming out of that, and I guess he really made an impression on at least the 10 people that were there watching it to kind of crack the rankings there. And he's got Illinois, I think Washington, or a couple of the others that have offered, if I remember correctly, in addition to kind of some of the interests that you said. So he's starting to kind of attract that attention. Obviously, he's well known in coaching circles because of who his dad is, so that certainly never hurts. That other schools are kind of aware of who he is and where he comes from. So, it's good to see kind of that name pop up. I'm all for any attention that Nebraska kids are able to garner, and it's just getting started. 2025, still got 2 more years of high school left. And I saw him play a couple times with Northeast in June, and really seems like he's focusing on kind of evolving his all-around game and off the dribble. He's doing really well with pull-up jumpers and things like that. And he's playing with a team that doesn't have a lot coming back from last year from a varsity standpoint. So a lot of freedom to go out, experiment, and try a lot of different things. And I think he made most of it.
Real quick on Chuck, what part of his game did you see make a jump even as early as this summer from this spring?
Probably, like I said, that pull-up jumper is what stood out the most in a couple of games that I saw, just the ability to kind of get shot and knock it down. I know coming into high school, like the three-point shot was kind of his thing, and he shot the ball really well that summer leading into his freshman year, but just kind of expanding the game, the ability to knock it down and create his own shot and shoot at an efficient rate. I think that's a part of his game that has stood out most to me, in addition to just the length and continue to grow and the wingspan and all that.
Jacob, appreciate you, bud. Thanks for jumping on. Have a great weekend of basketball, okay?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Good to spend time with Jacob Padilla, Hail Varsity Radio. Is a good rundown between hoops and football for him. So you wonder about Texas and Oklahoma as they make the transition to the SEC. Colin Cowherd, a couple weeks ago, touched on what he fears for Oklahoma in reference to maybe being the next Nebraska. Nebraska did initially, Elijah, struggle in the Big Ten, but once some changes were made, it's been really tough for Nebraska post-2014. That looks to change.
Well, it was really once the kids that committed to Nebraska, whenever they were still a Big 12 program, moved on from the program. That's where some of the struggles started. And I'm not saying that Nebraska couldn't recruit to the Big Ten, but their recruiting map changed, as we've hit on plenty of times on this show. And I think that's kind of the heart of the issue with Oklahoma is, are they going to be able to go pull kids from Louisiana, in Georgia, in Florida? Because their recruiting base has been Oklahoma and Texas traditionally. That's been where they've gone for years now. And is that going to be forced to change now that they go to the SEC?
And they've done California. I mean, Stoops killed it in California, and then Riley did well in California. Do they have to change? No, I don't think they do, because they're recruiting against some of the same heavyweights. Now they're just going to be playing them every weekend versus in a bowl matchup. But here's what Cowherd had to say about his fear for Oklahoma. We'll have the Bob Stoops what the hell response coming up here after that.
Keep your eye on Oklahoma. Is Oklahoma going to be the second program in our adult lives that disappears? Number one, the state no longer produces big numbers of players. Of the Sooners' 26 signees in their recruiting class, 3 are from the state of Oklahoma. That's having to convince kids in the South Convince kids in Texas, come to us. Secondly, they joined a tougher conference. Like Nebraska, this is going to be harder. Most of those Southern kids have grown up on the SEC. Those football players want to stay with traditional SEC powers. And number three, in an offensive era, they hired a defensive coach, and he was completely, utterly over his skis. They didn't get the coach right. I'm just saying, I may be wrong. Oklahoma's a great brand, but Lincoln Riley, remember, you don't necessarily leave a great top 6-7 program historically. But why did Brian Kelly leave Notre Dame? And why did Lincoln Riley leave Oklahoma? Because Brian Kelly knew when he faced Georgia the previous couple of years and lost both times, Georgia had better players. It's hard to convince kids to go to tiny, private, religious overtone Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana. It's way easier to get them to go to LSU. He went because of players. As good as Kelly is, you can only do so much when you have the second best players on a field against Bama and Georgia. And why did Lincoln Riley leave? Because he was joining the SEC, looked at the Bamas and the Georgias and the LSUs and the Floridas and those states and those kids and their leanings, and USC was wide open. By the way, you think Lincoln Riley didn't have a gut feeling somehow, some way, kind of felt Oklahoma to the SEC was going to be a hard pull? You go into Alabama and Georgia and LSU's backyard, welcome to SEC football. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but the three things Nebraska and Oklahoma have in common, states that don't produce a lot of high school stars, joined a conference that looks like it could be trouble for the program, and couldn't get the coach right.
Nebraska didn't get a couple of coaches right, as it turns out. You have more and more in-state talent, Elijah, that's being produced in the state, where you've got a handful of your top 8 to 10 kids that haven't gone to Nebraska because Nebraska's not been winning. They've gone to other SEC powers or other programs. What Bob Stoops had to say about this? Let's hear from Bob after the 50 break. But I think Lincoln Riley, he's like, dude, I'm going to get run out of town going 8-4, and I can go get $90 million. Let's see how when SC's been money, they've had good lines of scrimmage, just like everybody. But they've had elite. If you look back to the Pete Carroll years, they had dudes. They had NFL draft picks. And even Clay Helton had some NFL guys that he inherited that he didn't screw up. And SC's not that far removed from having really good, at least interior defensive linemen drafted.
Yeah, and I don't know. Whenever you look at this conversation as a whole, I don't think it's crazy to think that Oklahoma can have some challenges moving to the SEC. Things are going to change.
I think they have a lot of challenges with Venables. I think
I'll just say I think that Colin Cowherd saying this could be the next program that we see die in our lifetime is crazy. I don't think Blue Bloods ever really die. They go through lulls. They might not come back to what they once were, but I don't think
they go to timeout. they may go to timeout. Bob Stoops' response next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, it's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Big thanks to Jacob Padilla. This hour, as we talk some hoops and football with him. Next hour, Bill Doleman, 10 minutes away, Pride of Fairbury, NBC Sports. The professor will join us. Been a busy week of Nebraska football news. Get his take. Brady Oltmans also on the recruiting front. And what's next is Nebraska lost out on a lineman last night that picked K-State. Also lost out to a home state kid that is headed off to the Illini. Nebraska's still in the mix for some other linemen they really love on their board. So we'll see what the chances are there. Brady will give us some insight. One of the commits for Nebraska 2024, Rex Guthrie, safety rover out of Colorado. Heritage High School, another kid that camped, got an offer, and then committed. Did so last weekend. Rex will be with us around 5:40. Reminder about buckling up. One of every 3 fatal crashes in Nebraska involves an alcohol-impaired driver. Why take chances? If you drink, don't drive. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. That Oklahoma transition to the SEC, a topic. Bob Stoops has commented on it. Some talking points by Colin Cowherd a couple of weeks ago. Says, look, Nebraska's disappeared once they moved. Nebraska didn't disappear initially. Nebraska's been missing. And you've got a guy to try and make them found again in Matt Rhule. We laid that out with Pete Thamel's story on ESPN.com to start off. So what Bob Stoops think of this? He's a colleague with Cowherd at Fox. Big Game Bob weighed in and could have been nastier, wasn't, but he's not worried about OU.
Those people aren't thinking properly. Where's Nebraska located? I heard Colin Cowherd talking about it because.
And Elijah?
It's going out on the air. It's just not going to you or to the stream listeners.
Ah, that's shocking and disappointing. I'll shut up for the air listener.
Those people aren't thinking properly. Where's Nebraska located? I heard Colin Cowherd talking about it because of recruiting. And he said, well, Oklahoma in-state, we only signed 3 or 4 guys. Well, we're not just Oklahoma. All the way down into Dallas is home territory for us, as much as it is anybody else. And that's what they're not taking into account. Nebraska, geographically, is removed, a good ways from any real strong, fertile recruiting area. We're not. And that's a big difference. And, we fit in the SEC perfectly, and I believe it's going to help us recruit. And, I believe we'll handle it just fine. And you can't compare it to it's the offseason. They're just filling up airtime. Those people.
Okay, Adam, thank you for the heads up. Elijah, thank you for the audio from Bob Stoops for our on-air listeners. So the long and short of it is, look, Colin, we recruit all the way down to Dallas. We're okay. We'll fit perfectly in the SEC. That is the long and short. That is the Cliff Notes version because Oklahoma has recruited so well in Texas and in the metro for so long, they'll be fine. You can't compare the two with Nebraska and Oklahoma because of OU's vicinity to Dallas for so many years. Hour 2 coming up with Bill Doleman, Brady Oltmans, and, of course, Rex Guthrie.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel. 5865. And here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel. 5865.
And Bill Doleman, Hour 2 at Hail Varsity, presented by Currency. Pride of Fairbury joins us at Bill Doleman on Twitter. Bill, have you made the run to Missouri yet? Not for recruiting, but, well, for fireworks.
Still got him.
That's right. Doleman's playing thumb war with himself. That's pretty good.
I'm to blow my thumbs off, with the preemptive or the pre-July 4th fireworks, and all the pavement out in front of my apartment is not blackened by the snakes that we used to let off back in the day.
Snakes, snaps, and then the lady fingers. I mean, those were Americana at its finest, and if you remember what the Pirates said, it's not 4th of July until you have a good Roman candle fight.
I remember those days when you were invincible and you'd go out to the farm and just hope that it was not too dry, that you could get away with doing something like that. Bottle rockets. I mean, at least I've heard about those kinds of things.
Well, you had that neighbor that had a buddy that had the old flagpole stand on the side of the deck, and you just put the bottle rockets on there, and
We were that friend. We were that friend growing up, and we'd go to go to Missouri. You guys seen like the 3-foot tall bottle rockets that they sell in Missouri? They just have the big old salute on top. We'd go get those every single year, and like way too many of them. There was no fancy lights. There was nothing special about it. It just went up and it went boom loud. The whole neighborhood could hear it. We were always that family growing up. So apologies to our old neighbors for ruining your sleep and your dog's trust in you in the 4th of July earlier for my childhood.
Those were the Texas bottle rockets, if I remember correctly. Best story ever was Dad went down and he spent like zero money ever on the 4th of July, but he'd bring the beer over to someone's driveway. That was his rent. But one year he got a wild hair and he went down to Missouri, and we had a ton of stuff left over. We're talking like 2 gross of bottle rockets. So one Christmas, some yahoo in our neighborhood busted into our house. This was when I was in college. So they ransack our house. We got all of our stuff back through an attorney, but when the officers walking through the basement, the unfinished area, that's where Dad stashed all the bottle rockets, and the cop kind of looks down with his flashlight and says, "What do we got here?" And my dad, without him, he's like, "Well, look what he left." How did those get here? How the hell did those get there? Officer, would you like a jack?
Well, I think we all have had that little fireworks stash, because I kept some of those tall bottle rockets after 4th of July one time, saved them for New Year's when I'm like, all right, fireworks are legal again, let's light these off. And the thing didn't leave the tube. It was the big old salute on top, and you see the flame show at the bottom. It doesn't leave the tube. Everyone ducks for cover as this thing just blows up in the backyard. That was one of the scarier firework moments I've ever had. Because those things
everybody has that memory when you see the YouTube videos when things go awry at the neighborhood firework party these days. We all have those memories. We just don't have it on video of the Roman candles, the bottle rockets, or the parachutes that got tipped over and everybody was running for cover. And we all survived.
Or maybe it's the story of your older brother, looking at you, Ben, putting the artillery shell in the tube upside down so it just stays on the ground.
No. That's psychotic. Yeah, the old wind blowing the artillery shell over, and man, I didn't know you could move that quick. Bill, let's talk a little bit here. It's been a good week for Nebraska on the recruiting trail, but I want to first get your reaction to Pete Thamel's story. Really good feature on Coach Rhule, and it lays out maybe some stuff we haven't heard on Rhule and how the buy-in happened, and even some winter conditioning stuff from Gabe Irvin, just how he got bought in, but a really pretty good painting, a little more in depth specifically of how Rhule got it done in his previous 2 stops.
It's pretty amazing how we keep getting these stories, really long expose type stories, feature stories about Nebraska football and Matt Rhule and the program that just doesn't matter anymore. Ever since Matt Rhule has been hired in late November, about every 2 weeks, it seems, there's a story like this that comes out in a major publication about that story that just isn't relevant anymore, right? I say this all the time. Nebraska football still matters, right? And amidst all of the changeover and all of the uncertainty with the Pac-12, with the ACC, the Big 12 seems to have found its footing as the number 3 conference in the country. But there continues to be stories about Matt Rhule and Nebraska, and oftentimes it's kind of the same story, right? It's Matt Rhule has gone out and integrated himself and his staff within the state of Nebraska, and Nebraska has embraced him as one of their own. And then a couple of weeks later, it's SI.com. And I'm sure ESPN has already done one of these stories maybe a couple of months ago. And then it's The Athletic, and then it's Yahoo, and then it's On and on and on. So for the program that is irrelevant and no longer a major player on the national stage, they sure do continue to give us a whole. I'm talking about us collectively as Nebraskans, as people who have followed Nebraska football and athletics. They sure do continue to give that team and that program in this state a whole lot of coverage and interest because Nebraska football, Nebraska athletics, Nebraska. The college landscape.
Well, simply put, Bill, I think we're at the point now where the national media would prefer for Nebraska to be back on top again because of the amount of pull that Nebraska still has in this sport. Like, we were just listening last hour to Colin Cowherd, and he said he was worried Oklahoma goes the way of Nebraska. Nebraska's not the only blue blood that's fallen on hard times in the past 20 years. They might be the most recent in our memory, but you can look back and say, the same thing happened to Oklahoma in the 90s. The same thing has happened to Tennessee for about the past 15 years. Yet the first place his mind goes is Nebraska because I think that's all the proof you need that Nebraska still has a lot of pull in the sport.
You're right. It's somewhat cyclical that the elite do go through that downtime. And, Oklahoma did, with John Blake. And you go back to the last game that Tom coached at Memorial Stadium. What was the final score? 69-7. Florida State's gone through it. Clemson has gone on the upswing and has played pretty well, but now, they're falling out of the top 5 and whatnot. Georgia went through it for many years and is now on top. What happens to Alabama when Nick Saban retires? You go from Bear Bryant to David Shula and all of the iterations of coaches that they've had at Alabama where they've gone up and down. It happens to every program, right? And we just thought maybe we were immune to it. Most of our problems have been self-inflicted. You hope that with the leadership the program has now that the course has been corrected, and I think everybody believes that. And if we didn't believe it, and if the national media didn't believe it, we would not be seeing again these stories continue about how much Matt Rhule has done and his staff. Let's not just say it's Matt Rhule, his staff. He has smart people that have been guiding him: Trev Alberts, Ted Carter, Ronnie Green. Nebraska seems to have everybody on the right page doing taking so many of the right steps. And so the story that Pete Thamel wrote the other day was, something that's like, I think I read this before. Matt Rhule goes into small town, goes into the tavern, or in this case, the Elks Club, and goes to the baby shower. And, it all pays off with Carter Nelson giving Nebraska his pledge. And it's all significant. I'm not going to discount that, Carter Nelson and Danny Kalin and all of those guys from Bellevue and other places, giving their pledge and commitment to Nebraska that is not significant. Recruiting doesn't pay off until, 2 or 3 years down the road. But it is significant that these kids are looking around going, you know what? I do want to be a part of this. And I think that when you see Kalin and the Omaha kids and the outstate kids and all that coming on board, it's all a big deal, and it's all going to pay off, I think, in the long run.
Bill Doleman's joining us, Hail Varsity Radio, Friday edition, at Bill Doleman on Twitter. Pride of Fairbury, NBC Sports, the professor with us. And Bill, to kind of piggyback on that buy-in, what do you like about what you're hearing with Matt Rhule's culture? We're going to talk to Rex Guthrie about that in about 25 minutes. That's something that he's highlighted, but you've been around it a lot, man. You saw it firsthand work and work well, and it was truly guys that wanted to be with one another all those hours trying to get better for Saturdays.
Referring to I think you're referring to the Gabe Urban quote about you have to have your water bottle to the right. It can't be in front, can't be to the left, can't be behind. And those little things, those attentions to details, that's something that I hammer home in my classes. You have to pay attention to detail. And if you have a couple of guys, a couple of leaders on that team who understand what that's about, that have maybe a savvy and an intuition as to why that's significant, when you have leaders that buy in like that, all of a sudden there becomes an accountability. And when players notice attention to detail might be a little bit off and might say, hey, you got to get your water bottle over here, or you got to stack the weights a certain way, or whatever else was alluded to in that article, that breeds accountability. As I read that, because Players are going to look out for other players. Hey, you got to do this. You can't, and then you're not sloppy in some of the other areas, be it on the field, in the weight room, or, I can remember going back, to the training table days, and people were afraid of George Sullivan, the beloved late trainer, the legendary, Nebraska had so many wonderful personalities in the athletic department, Don Bryant, but people would look around for George because he wouldn't let you wear your hat in the training table. And if you had your hat on, he'd come over and knock it off your head, right? But people were looking around. And then you had other guys say, hey, you got to get your hat off because George is going to come. Well, nobody wanted George mad at them, right? Everybody loves George Sullivan. So it's those little things where players become accountable to each other, and that will breed more accountability. And I've alluded to it so many times on the show because I love the story so much when I got to spend time going down to the football stadium in the summer to do those interviews and watching those players in the mid-'90s practice in 120-degree heat on the field just with themselves to get ready for the season. You couldn't have coaches there, and it was them, and they were accountable to each other, and they made each other pay attention to detail on the field on those plays that they were running, and that will pay off. So it's the little things like that will create a bigger wave of accountability so that when you get into the game, people pay attention to detail, they're accountable to one another, and then that leads to hopefully a winning culture. And people will remember this who are of my generation. And this is somewhat of an odd comparison, but it reminded me of when we played basketball at Fairbury High back in the day for Chuck Moore. Everybody knew Fairbury High School basketball because we wore these red blazers, and everybody else, everybody dresses up on game day, but we had to wear red blazers. And there was the same blazers that were handed down from the early 70s to the mid-1980s. And we also had to have a haircut that was 2 fingers above the eye, up over the ear, and 2 fingers above the collar. And there was a uniformity in that, but there was a discipline in that. And as funny as it kind of was, I get it. There's an attention to detail and a camaraderie that's built through that.
It's buy-in and being able to be part of something bigger than you, which is great. Was it the Gary Michaels red blazer?
I wish. Oh, Lord, I wish.
that Bill was rocking back in the mid-'80s.
At least tell me that the ladies like the red blazers with the uniform haircuts. Like, that had to have some sort of pull there, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Without question. It was a real GQ type thing, right? We were trendsetters. I think I wore the same blazer that Bob Siegel wore in 1973, right?
Did you ever go through the pockets? Did someone forget to take anything out of the...
They played in the 70s, not in the late 60s, okay? I don't know what was stacked in the pockets back then. I'm just
asking. That's why I'm asking, man. I had 4 points and 3 rebounds, but this thing's... Hell, let's give her a try. Kidding, of course. Give her a try.
Yeah, Spicoli was one of the great point guards in the late 60s back in Fairbury High.
Yeah. Hear my skull. Pretty good. Yeah. Bill, let's check in next week. It'll be good to spend a few minutes with you. Are you what's going on? I mean, do you have any advice? How's Shagster going to take this the incoming that will be Lincoln and fireworks this weekend?
Well, he's got his stashed. I mean, I think most laws that are in place are for, people. I don't know that there's any laws on the books on what a dog can or can't have on the 4th of July. So, Shaggy's all ready to go.
But
there's no question about that.
There are laws about what you can and can't buy.
And he doesn't have to worry about blowing off opposable thumbs. I mean, he's already got that mastered, right?
He's good. He's pretty good. Yep, the old quiet time treats. Gertie's got her stash as well. And the Labradoodle just doesn't care anymore. So, Bill, we'll check in this weekend, bud. Appreciate you jumping on with us.
Okay, guys, go Big Red, go USA.
There he is, Pride of Fairbury, NBC Sports, Bill Doleman. We covered a lot there: smuggling fireworks, making sure your pets are mellow during the incoming, and of course, Matt Rhule and the feature with ESPN. Great recruiting week. As Brady Oltmans was all over it. We'll get his thoughts this week's end. Brady Oltmans next on Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. Schmidt and Elijah Herbel. Brady Oltmans back with us. You got to get Brady a bottle as a thank you for all sorts of time this week with giving us updates on the recruiting front at Brady Oltmans on Twitter. And, of course, can read him with HailVarsity.com and magazine. Brady, good to spend time with you again. Thanks for everything this week. Great work as always, man. Can't wait for your Carter Nelson story to come out on Sunday with HailVarsity.com. Let's put a number next to this week. Give me a percentage here. Like, how well did Nebraska hit? Are they in the 80, the 90 percentile, or are they still not where they want to be? And I know that sounds weird based on how June has gone.
I'd almost say 90 percentile. I think the coaching staff feels good about where they're at. Caden Massey, the big offensive lineman, chose to go to Kansas State yesterday, but I think he's one that Nebraska got in, had visited and everything, but just, I don't know. I think the coaches saw that as it would have been a stretch for them to secure a commitment out of him. But at the same time, they've got some other offensive linemen on the radar. Grant Brick's probably priority number one for them that they feel is the most attainable at this moment. As of right now, it sounds like Grant's going to take a little bit to think about his commitment. I wouldn't expect it imminently. It could go into the season or not, but I'd certainly not think it's coming any day now. But, I mean, they just kept it rolling through June. They felt camp season, they got momentum built up, momentum from the official visits, and then it rolls through with an in-state 4-star kid, and then it keeps going with Carlin Jones and getting a big, athletic, imposing defensive lineman. So the momentum's going, and I certainly think the diversity in positions, it's not just hitting in one position. They're really hitting all over the board. That really, I think, makes the momentum that they built over the last month kind of really stand out.
Brady, if there's no more additions to the class of 2024, which I don't think is the case, I think there's still a couple more guys that are going to join the class. But if this was the finalized class, where would you be worried and what would you feel good about in this class?
I think it's just the athleticism. The sheer athleticism stands out right away. I mean, and to your point, I think they've got a lot of, or I guess a couple of guys on the radar still that are within committable distance, I'll say, guys that they think they can kind of close the gap on or maybe even potentially commit still. And those are athletic kids. Ernest Campbell from Refugio in Texas, like that's the fastest kid in Texas. I mean, he runs basically a 10-1 100. Like it's ridiculous, and then you've got Mario Buford, incredibly athletic. Carter Nelson is a 6'5" tight end who can pole vault 14 feet and high jump 7 feet. I mean, these are just sheer athletic traits that are amazing. And of course, that's something Rhule and his coaching staff really hammer in on. Not to mention, you've got, even going back to Bryce Turner and Jalen Lloyd and guys from the last recruiting class, it just goes to show that this is a different breed of athlete and a different kind of, I don't want to say urgency because that might not be the right word, but it's just they're attacking the recruiting trail just differently than Nebraska's attacked the recruiting trail since I can remember.
Brady, is that just because of the transparency and also the confidence? Rhule's talked about needing to instill confidence back into the here and now roster, right? All those missteps, not all on the kids or the players, but we know what the tight ball game record's been. So you got to pump up who's going to be taking snaps and making tackles for you next fall. That said, Rhule seems to be, him and his staff, they're really confident about their message, their plan, and it's really connected with a lot of kids. There's been a lot of camp commitments.
Yeah, I think it stands out, the just pure relationship that they build with kids. I mean, they're really genuine, even just in, when I walk by the football offices or when I see one of the coaches or one of the staffers, in the hallway walking around campus or, in the stadium whenever we've gone in for interviews or work or even at camp stuff. They see you and you shake your hand, you talk, catch up for a couple minutes, and then you're on your way. I mean, they'll go out of their way. They won't just, do the as you're passing by in 42 County or in Brown County, you give the 2-finger wave and pass on by, they'll take the time to stop and shake your hand and talk with you. I think that stands out. There's also something to be said for this staff, and a lot of them have an NFL pedigree. I mean, they've coached in the NFL, they've evaluated NFL talent, they've developed NFL talent at Temple and at Baylor. And let's face it, if you're going to try to recruit a high school kid who ideally wants to get to the NFL, and they say, well, this person's coached at the NFL, they know what it takes to get there, that's going to stand out, and kids are going to take time. If you can tell them sincerely, I know how to get you to the NFL, here's my plan for you, that kid's going to take a minute out of his time to listen to you. So I think all that built together, plus, I mean, the pageantry, the fan support, everything, you can recruit to the Sea of Red in Nebraska. And I think all of it's, coalescing into a big momentum swing. And the coaching staff was able to capitalize on that this last month entirely. And that's why Nebraska's knocking on a top 10 recruiting class right now.
Brady Oltmans is with us here at Hail Varsity Radio. And Brady, one of the things we've talked about on the show today is Pete Thamel's article, and specifically a quote from Gabe Ervin, simply, it's about water bottles, and how that coaching staff is emphasizing attention to detail. The water bottle needs to be here as opposed to here, here, or here. It's got to be in one spot right in front of you. And I want to get your take on it. Obviously, attention to detail has been lacking in Husker football within the past couple of seasons. And I want to get your thoughts on the coaching staff right now. Do they practice what they preach? Have you seen that attention to detail on the recruiting trail within the past couple of months?
Oh, well, are you speaking of Gabe Ervin, cover star of the Hail Varsity 2023 annual yearbook and available on newsstands now? Is that the same Gabe Ervin?
Same Gabe Ervin.
HailVarsity.com/offer to get your subscription.
Yeah, I found it interesting even when we were doing the cover shoot with Gabe. Eric was lining him up, getting him moved around, and Eric would just kind of say, move your head here, or go down like this, head down, cross over, and Gabe was accommodating, just follow it up, do it. And at one point, I think Eric said, hey, does this remind you of being coached? Not a whole lot of please, yes, do this thing. And Gabe's like, no, they don't ask, they tell us where to go, and we listen because we want to be coached like that. We want to get better, and that's how we take things. And I think about it now, and that kind of stands out. Like it gets said a lot, but it goes back to that kind of Nick Saban quote, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And something like this coaching staff did throughout the whole winter workouts and everything was all the team building, team bonding. That's one thing. Thamel's written numerous columns or numerous stories about Matt Rhule, partially because of their relationship over the years, relationship with the agent and everything over the years. But it's one thing that he's harped on before, having that time together, bringing people together. It's one thing that Rhule believes in, the coaching staff believes in, and clearly it's catching on with the Huskers here now. And I think you see that attention to detail, and yeah, it's sometimes winning is in the margins. And for a program that hasn't won those close games, I mean, it's all becomes margins. You know what I mean? Like that. For whatever you want to call that Northwestern game in Ireland last year, Nebraska blew double-digit leads twice in that game. And it's even that onside kick, you could argue, is in the margins. If that's marginally a little bit over, Nebraska recovers it, it is game over. Like, good teams find a way to win in the margins. And that's just one thing Nebraska hadn't done in a while. And I think Thamel highlights in that story, too, it's not because they didn't have the athletes to get it done. I mean, and Rhule has said this numerous times, hats off to Frost and to Mickey, because the guys that they would recruit, they're good athletes. They just need to finish that piece of development. So I think that's where the coaching staff now sees themselves, of like just putting that final piece of development and building up with that attention to detail.
It's nice to hear this staff and Rhule thankful for what they get to come into. I mean, I know 3-9, 4-8's not great, but they see the talent, and I know we have that talent discussion. We get emails all the time. Folks chime into the streamer on Twitter. Hey, what's the deal? Where's Nebraska's talent at? And there's enough there to do better than 4 wins. And Rhule's been very complimentary about those before him. He hasn't talked a lot about them, but he's been complimentary, and that's a class move. Let's talk Nebraska's recruiting board. Ideally, Brady, here, just about 3 minutes left here, bud. What is the board like from a position standpoint? Are you thinking 2 tackles and an edge rusher, maybe a wideout, or is there offensive, defensive line spots, and then wild card for that third spot? Or do you even have a number capped off?
Well, I haven't really thought. I haven't put it together of like the big targets left and where they stand. But I would venture to say there are two names that come to my mind, and then you probably have a defensive lineman thrown in there that they can find, or maybe someone pops during the season that they evaluate and go after. But Grant Bricks, big priority. You try to go after him. They've clearly done an active job of doing that. Now he gets an offer, an official visit from Alabama shortly before he comes to Nebraska on an official visit. But even then, he's been to Nebraska 5-6 times already before going to Tuscaloosa. I think there's something about Nebraska that resonates. He's clearly just over the Missouri, so he's within that radius of that. The red bleeds over into a little bit of other red in Ames country, and it's just far enough to Nebraska. I think you could maybe call that a home field advantage. And then Gatlin Bear, the speedy wideout from Idaho, he is still, to my knowledge, last time I heard from his head coach, he still has to take his official visits to Boise and Nebraska. Both of them are in his top 5, and he has said before that he wants to take officials to all of his top 5 schools before he makes an announcement. There's relationships to Michigan, and Colton Loveland played from Idaho, played at Cameron Anderson. Now the coach of Burley played at his school in Gooding, Idaho before. But those are the two big names that come to my mind. And then, I think the other one's a wild card, just in somebody that pops maybe during the season.
Quickly here, Brady, with Gatlin. That's a huge name. He's a speedster, great frame. He's not going to make it to college for a couple years now. How imminent is his decision with a Mormon mission looming for Gatlin, knowing that I think it's 2025 whenever he can first start playing college football?
Yeah, he said before he really wanted the commitment to be done this summer. He wanted to take officials all the way this summer, but just timing wise, he's pretty much committed to committing after taking all 5 officials. That might bleed into the season, but then he plans on, again, still graduating early, taking a 2-year mission, and then starting in January 2026. Okay, yeah. I guess technically would be the timeline, but his older brothers are college athletes, and they all took Mormon missions, and they all ended up being faster at the other end of it. So it's hey, you'll take that probably.
Brady, we'll check in next week. Appreciate you much, man. Have a great weekend.
No problem, guys. Take it easy.
There he is. Awesome stuff from Brady Oltmans. Follow him at Brady Oltmans. We'll check in. Rex Guthrie on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Link is sent, so we're going to hopefully hear from Rex Guthrie, safety out of Littleton, Colorado, really talented ball player, Heritage High School. So he's supposed to join us here. This segment video stream, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel is where that can happen. Can watch that as we'll get Rex in the green room, out of the green room here in a moment. But good for Rex. Be sure to check out Brady and his podcast, The Eye Test with Eric Francis. Brady was talking about Eric and the photo shoot for the yearbook. Really awesome. Yearbook is out for you to grab. Let's add Rex to the stream right now. Rex, do you have us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, bud. Hey, congrats on your commitment to Nebraska. I wanted to just touch base with you as you're live with us here on Hail Varsity Radio and, of course, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. What was it about Nebraska, Rex? Tell us about not only the camp experience, but also that decision to commit.
Yes, sir. So I went to the camp 2 weeks ago, and that there was a decent amount of kids there, but like immediately I could tell that all the coaches were totally invested in the camp and, you know, paying attention to everyone, which was great to see. And then I performed really well and got offered. And then coming back on the official visit, just the culture and the coaching staff just blew me away. Like, everyone seems super invested, and they truly believe that they're going to go win championships, which is huge.
Rex Guthrie with us here, commitment from Heritage High School, Littleton, Colorado, safety rover, really fantastic athlete, wants to be part of that Nebraska program for 2024 and beyond. When we hear culture, what does that mean to you, and what is visible in a good culture, a good locker room? What was it about some of these kids in the 2024 class that made you feel good?
I would say culture, you win with culture, I guess. If everyone is working as a team and not just individuals, then that's when the team comes together and really starts winning big games, I think. And I could immediately see that with not only the recruits, but, the players there right now. And they were just saying how much of a good change it's been from Scott Frost to the new coaching staff, and just how good they are, I guess. Yeah.
Rex Guthrie's with us here at Hail Varsity Radio. And Rex, I want to get into your history a little bit. Were you a kid that grew up in Colorado supporting the Buffs? Were you a Husker fan? What is your childhood like, and why was Nebraska the spot that you wanted to go camp and go impress and earn an offer? What about Nebraska made that appealing to you?
I grew up, I guess, an Air Force fan because my dad played there. So I see you a little too because my mom went there, but not as much. And I went to the camp because Coach Satterfield actually came to our school and was talking to me, and he wanted me to come out. So it was like an hour flight. So I said, screw it, and flew out. It was totally worth it. Yeah.
Did you think that by going out there, an offer could have been in store for you?
I guess you can kind of expect that at any camp, but it's obviously not guaranteed at all. So I wouldn't say I was expecting one, but you always can kind of hope for one, I guess. Yeah.
Rex, let's talk about your position. I mean, over 100 tackles, really nice when it comes to TFLs. And, you do such solid work with the film we've seen in run support, but also in coverage. Let's discuss your fit in this 3-3-5 defense. What does Nebraska like about your traits in this defense?
I think Coach Cooper likes my size, and then with that, the speed and athleticism I have at that size. And he was telling me that a lot of the DBs learned all 5 of the DB positions, just so you can get more reps and know the defense better, I guess. So I'll have to learn all of them, I think, but I really don't know where I'll fit in yet, I guess. Just depending, on how much I weigh, I guess, stuff like that.
Rex, for those of our listeners that aren't as familiar with your game as maybe Schmidt and I are, who would you say that you model your game after? Well, what guys out there do you watch and say, man, that's who I want to play like?
I would say John Lynch is a big one, big hitter. Harrison Smith too. Just I don't know, safeties who lay the wood, I guess. Come down and fill the run, not just get interceptions and break balls up.
What's kind of your emphasis at Centennial? Are you guys an aggressive team? Do you sit back?
Heritage.
What'd I say?
You said Centennial. Come on now.
Here comes the hang up. My fault. Sorry about that, Rex. We're going to edit this. Kidding. But my point is what style of defense are you in, and tell me a little bit about how that allows you to kind of showcase.
Yeah, so we play a lot of quarters defense, cover 4, which allows me and the other safety to fill the run a lot. And then we do a lot of adjustments since we play a good amount of teams that run the ball a lot, where we come down and play linebacker as well. So I'm in the box maybe a quarter of the time playing linebacker, I guess. So, not just safety. And then corner too a little.
With your skill set, when we talk about being versatile, and that's a thing you have, what do you think about the Big Ten? I mean, because you got to be able to to handle that workload with the teams that get downhill. And of course, you got the Hollywood teams coming in as well that throw it around.
Yeah, it's a good mix in the Big Ten, I guess. Like you said, with USC and UCLA coming from the Pac-12 and throwing the ball, and then other teams that will just run it down your throat. And I like both of those, so I'll definitely be ready for pass and run, I guess.
Rex Guthrie's with us here at Hail Varsity Radio. And Rex, probably last thought before we get you out of here. We were discussing your high school, Heritage High. I know a notable alumni of Heritage High, I have some family out there, is Matt Stone, co-creator of South Park, now owner of Casa Bonita. So I got to get your take. Casa Bonita, yes or no?
Yes. I haven't been there yet, but I got to go soon. I want to see it, yep. I'm a huge South Park fan, too.
I'm glad to see the kids nowadays still watch South Park. Do you think you could handle the cliff diving?
I don't know. Maybe. I think so. I would say yes, maybe.
Well, we went to Casa Bonita when I was a kid, and that's a billion years ago. And the cliff diving was great, but the cheese enchilada was even better, Rex. So it was pretty good. Hey, it was fun to catch up with you. We'll do this again. Congrats on your commitment to Nebraska, Rex. Thanks for the time today.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Appreciate it. Good to hear from Rex Guthrie and Heritage High School, Elijah. Thank you, Littleton, Colorado. Good to spend a few minutes with Rex. We'll get that posted on the podcast and, of course, on the video stream with Hail Varsity YouTube. We'll wind down a Friday next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Schmidt and Elijah Herbel. Podcast going to be loaded up for you on the audio side, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, the full show. Video, Hail Varsity YouTube. Can also watch or rewatch daily on the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio, and can also catch Coffee and Cream weekday mornings. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers, 7 to 10. So be sure to lock that in on your mornings. Tomorrow, we're excited. Weekend edition is back. Mark Cranack, myself, Elijah Herbel. We'll be able to run down the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp, and get his take on the week that's been. Really enjoyed Brady Oltmans' insight today on where Nebraska's class is at. That Bricks commitment could be a while, but pretty impressive if we just look back to his visit weekend. That's the name you got to think about on the offensive line. Nebraska wants that missing piece. He's already visited Bama, took his official there, but came to Lincoln and gave that a 9 out of 10 last weekend. So that is Nebraska's probably prime target, and that is something to be patient for. You mentioned Gatlin. He's got the 2-year Mormon mission, but that kid's a ball player, and Nebraska will continue to pursue him. And tomorrow we'll recap some of the recruiting weekend. Carter Nelson, the name that has been on our mind a lot. And big thanks to Rex Guthrie, as we just spent about 5 to 7 minutes with him last segment. Bill Doleman kicked off this hour, and then Jacob Padilla, some good insight, not only on basketball, but some football. Elijah, you umping anywhere this weekend, or do you have little you time with friends and fam?
I got the weekend off from umpiring. I think it's going to be a camping trip for me this weekend. Unsure if we're going to go both Saturday night and Sunday night and then come back on Monday for the 4th of July festivities, or if it's going to be just a Sunday night into Monday. But we are in the works, trying to find a campground still. We were late to the party, getting one booked out, so we're going to figure out where we're going. But that's what's on the docket for me. I'll be back at it umpiring on the 9th of July, which we'll see. That may be my last games of the season, which baseball season always flies by. But once we get through 4th of July, once we get through the area and state tournaments for Legion baseball, it's pretty much football season.
A thought. So what are the supplies you have to get when you go camping? Do you have a little camper you go with? Is it a tent? Are you taking a mallet and slamming stakes into the ground? And I know you're a big campfire guy, so you'll start that up responsibly, of course. Mm-hmm. But is it a cold cooler full of beer, or is it more meat sticks? Is it fireball? I mean, what is Elijah's camping trip all about?
Well, for anyone listening with the Game and Parks Association, no alcohol whatsoever on any camping trip, guaranteed by Elijah Herbel. You don't have to check. We don't keep it in our trunk. Don't you worry about that.
How about your canoe?
But for us, other than that, we're gonna go tent, sleeping bags. You get some sleeping pads to make sure you get off the ground. You need the firewood, some camping cooking essentials like some cast irons and a pot to boil some water because coffee in the morning is an essential. And then food. Other than that, we're just gonna go out there, enjoy the great outdoors. We will bring a speaker, most likely. A speaker to get some tunes playing underneath the stars is a pretty big essential while you drink on a Pepsi. We'll call it that.
So you're just sitting around the campfire, maybe a marshmallow, for sure a speaker, and you're just staring at the sky.
And having good conversation. It's a beautiful night.
It is good. Back tomorrow morning around 7:40, Weekend Edition. Stream that. Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Big thanks to Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. Talk to you manana with Hail Varsity.